there.
Hi, everyone. It's been a month. Very good to see you guys again. And today we have this Q&A session as usual with Sam Taylor, and he is the author of right now is 7 or 8 books already on 10 books,
Wow.
11. And yeah, about the biblical Hebrew and original of man. And now we are going to answer some of the burning questions from the audience, the faithful audience. So, Sam, would you like to take the question for today, the order of the question?
Okay. Thank you, G. Yeah, today, so far we have two questions, but of course you can present your question live while we're here. We have one question from Abby, and we have a second question from Salma. So let's start with, we're going to start with Salma. But just before that, I just want to mention, because G said there are 11 books, actually, the 11th is not yet finished. But this Thursday, no, this Friday, that's tomorrow, the 24th chapter is going to be blogged. And it's actually the 24th chapter is the final chapter of the book. So the book basically is finished. However, there are going to be 12 lessons because these are practical lessons that we're going to be adding in what I've sort of called the Bible Proverbs therapy for helping people with mental health. So once those 12 lessons are added, then the book will be finished. And I don't know, we might add 1 or 2 lessons per week. I'll see how that goes. So in a 2, 3 months, it's going to be finished for sure. Okay, just thought I'd bring you up to date on that. So let's go ahead and do Salma's question. I note that Salma has joined us here. So Salma, if you'd like to ask your question, or else I'll ask G to go ahead and read it. I see that there you are.
Yes, I'm here, Sam. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine. How about you?
Yeah, I'm doing well. My question has to do with the confounding of the languages. And we will have to actually teach me a little bit what the word confounding actually means in the Hebrew, because in Hebrew, as you told me, the 7 keys and all that, and there was actually so many ways to interpret one word, has many meanings. So I would like you to take me through that and help me explain what it meant to actually have the confounding of the languages. That God actually confounded the languages when they were building the city and the tower in Genesis 11:7 through 9 or 8. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Okay, well, I wasn't expecting that. That's the question that you sent in was slightly different regarding the one language. But so I actually haven't even looked at that particular word. And so this is interesting because what we're going to do is actually we're going to do a word study on the word confound. So let's just go ahead and do that, and we'll see what we've come up with. So here we go. So I'm going to share my screen here. All right. So now you should be seeing the screen for unlockbiblemeaning.com. Okay, so it's in verse 7. And he confounded the language, did there confound the language. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch to Strong's, and in verse 7, we have confounded. All right, so here it is, 1101. Here's the word in Hebrew, and it comes from 1098. So as we know, that's well, it looks like here, it's not necessarily the root, but we're going to bring it up anyway. 1098, corn fodder. I'm just reading, we can read, of course, what Strong writes about this, but that's his commentary on this particular word. What I generally do is read the King James Version translations because these are the translations given by the 50 scholars that were involved in the translation from the Hebrew and Greek to English. So we've got anoint, which is actually a very interesting one. Confound, mingle, mix, self, give provender, food, and temper. So we've got I'm just sort of a play on words here. We've got a mixed bag of words, of meanings for this particular word, which of course, as we know, is the first key to comprehending biblical Hebrew, and that is that it has different meanings, different translations. What we'd have to do is actually go, then we would want to click on here, Hebrew Concordance for 1101. And what I'm going to do, well, let's just do that. Hebrew Concordance for 1101, and that brings up all these words, all the contexts where we find the original Hebrew word, which is balal, in the particular context in the verses. And so we can go through all of these here and then find in what verse is each of these translations, and hence we can better understand the meaning of the word. I'm not going to go through all of them, but I just want to point out that the second key to understanding biblical Hebrew is also here because we have the word and its opposite. So we have mingled, but we also have anoint. Now, anoint is a very positive aspect of what God does. So whereas in the context of confounding the languages, we could consider that sort of negative. In one sense, of course, what God did was a positive thing by mingling the languages, but obviously it would be better if everybody spoke one language. And we know that in the future, in the millennium, after God's return, that there will be, once again, just one language. It says that, I believe it's in Zechariah, but I'd have to find the verse. I can't remember right now. So let's just look up confound. So what I'm going to do is on Windows, an Alt F to find, and you can see it on the top of the screen here, and I'm going to put in confound, and we'll see how many times this comes up. So actually there are only 3. So, the only other 2 times are in they're both in Genesis 11 here, and they're confounded their language. This is in verse 7. And then in verse 9, it says Babel, because the Lord did their confound. It's the only time. So let's go and look at another thing here. Mingle. I'm going to take a look at mingle, because mingle means to sort of mix together, M-I-N-G-L-E. And let's see what happens. Oh, wow, there's 38 mingles. Here we have a fine flour mingled with oil, so we can see it's a mixture here. What I want to actually do is come back to see if there's in Genesis. Yeah, and they're confounded. Oh, okay, here. So we've got it here, 1101, but I want mingled. So there's no mingled in Genesis, but we find it in quite a bit, it looks like, in Exodus, and it's talking about preparing the meal offerings or the meat offerings, deal of flour mingled with a fourth part of an hin. So it's a lot to do with the bullocks here, meat offering mingled with oil. It's the mixture, flour mingled, and it's basically all of these deal, fine flour mingled. So it's basically dealing with mixing, and it's fundamentally used as a word for sacrifices. So let's just go a little bit further here. Let's do anoint. Let's take a look and see what this has to do. Anoint. There we go. And it's 6 times. And so we have this in Exodus here. And waters unleavened, anointed with oil. Okay. Oh, no, excuse me. And wafers unleavened, anointed with oil. So, and here we have again unleavened wafers anointed, and there's another one here. Wafers anointed. Yeah, it's referring to these unleavened. So here it's anointed with oil. Obviously, what I understand from this, because it says here in cakes, and here we have the same word again, mingled with oil. So here we've got, it's difficult to say whether the oil here was poured onto the wafers, or because here it's got cake mingled with oil. In other words, whether the oil was, as I said, poured onto the wafers, or whether it was part of the recipe to make the wafers. That we'd have to check it out. But the point is here, yeah, it's unleavened bread anointed. This word, it looks like, has to do quite a bit with sacrifices and with food. It says temper here. I'm just going to look at this for temper. Okay, temper. So we've got only two. Oh, actually, so there it is. Tempered. Unleavened bread and cakes unleavened, tempered with oil. So once again, it's sacrifices. So what's interesting here, we'd have to look up give provender. Oh yeah, let's look up mix self, because that's interesting here. Mix. So here we have Ephraim. He has mixed himself among the people. Ephraim is a cake not turned. That's interesting, isn't it? I don't know whether this is referring to marriage, or whether it's referring, I'd have to read the context here, but he's obviously mixed himself in with the people. This could be with their, well, we'd have to, let's just do it here. We'd go to Hosea 7:8, see what it means. Hosea 7:8. See the context here. 7:8. Yeah, strangers have devoured his strength, and he knows not. Yea, gray hair in here upon him, he knows not. So Ephraim's all mixed up. For they have made ready their heart like an oven. While they lie in wait, their baker sleeps at the night. In the morning he burns as a flaming fire. They are all hot in the oven. They have devoured their judges, and their kings have fallen. There is none that calleth upon me. Yeah. So basically what we've got here in Hosea, where it's talking about mixed, is he's just become part of the people, and he's gone away from God. So it's really a mixing in with the people, with their attitudes, with probably their ceremonies, and just everything that God warned Israel not to do, to join with other people and their attitudes, their way of life, even their religions, etc., etc. So the whole point, if I come back to Balal, and if we go back to Genesis 11 here, find, confound, it's just a mixing of languages. Instead of speaking one language, which it says earlier on here, have all one language, and this we begin to do. It's the multitude of languages. And of course, today we look around and we see these multitude of languages. I believe we have over 4,000 languages worldwide. What is interesting, and I don't want to get into this aspect of it, but if you try looking up origin of languages and see what the dictionaries and the historians have to say about the origin of languages. They don't have much to say, actually, because they don't know, obviously, what the origin of language is. I read this story, or I heard this story some time ago, that they used to have a group, and it still might exist, a sort of a committee or an association of scholars that studied the origin of languages. And they actually had to quit. They stopped the association because they just were in total confusion, and they didn't know what these things are or what the origin is or was. When you get into language, and of course we all speak languages. Language is an amazing thing because we have grammar, and the grammar, I had a question earlier on the website, on YouTube rather, about somebody who made some sort of who made a statement about the seven keys. He was commenting on a video that included the seven keys, and he said, "You made that up." That was a negative statement for him. You made that up, so it's useless, it's worthless. And I got to, I was trying to think about it and how to figure out how to answer this, and I haven't answered that particular aspect of that question yet. He had a number of points, and I answered some of the other points. But the whole point is, yeah, I did make that up. But how do you make it up? You make it up. You make something up because you've actually studied it, and your study shows you that there's a structure. And then you pull that structure out. And that's exactly what I did. I pulled the structure of the Hebrew, of the words out. And I realized that as I pulled that structure out, that it fell into certain categories. And those categories became the keys. And I was just thinking about, like Einstein, the E equals mc squared. How did that's a structure. And he made that up. He made that up. He discovered it. It's because he knew the E, energy, he knew the M, the mass, and he knew the c squared, which is speed of light squared. And he saw the relationship between those three things, and he made it up. And he made up his equation. We would use a different word. He discovered that. And that's basically what it is. And why am I talking about this? Because that's what grammar is. Grammar does not make the language. Grammar is simply a realization of the way the language is formed, of the way the language is expressed. That's what grammar is. It's in French, I can't think of the word now. In French, it's we use, say, a constatation. We realize that this is the way that it is. We go, that's what that's all scientists do. They make up things based on what they see. So he says, you made it up. Yeah, I made it up. But now you've got to go check out and see if what I made up is correct or not. I mean, that's what everybody's doing with Einstein's theory and everybody else's theories. You go and double check it and see if that is the case. And of course, with the grammar, that is the case. What has always amazed me about languages is that we know there are all sorts of rules, but we know that practically in every single, well, I can't talk about every single language because I don't know most of them, but there are always exceptions to the rules. And how come there are exceptions? There are exceptions to the rules. I mean, why do we spell words and pronounce words that have totally different spelling, etc.? I'm not going to get into all of those details, and I don't necessarily even have all of those details in my mind. But it's just amazing because a language is very, very, very complicated. And the proof is that we have never invented a new language. We've come up with a common language, at least people have tried to think or tried to make it common, and that is Esperanto, sort of an amalgamation of English, German, well, English, it's Latin language, it's based on Spanish, more or less. But the point is that doesn't include any of the Asiatic languages whatsoever. So it's not an international sort of amalgamation of all these languages. It's very, very difficult to come up with a new language, to start from scratch. And we've got 4,000 of these languages. So where did they come from? If you just think logically. Now, of course, a lot of people don't think logically, but this is where they came from. This is what confounding means. Confounding.
Sam, I wanted to say something about Asiatic languages that you mentioned.
Mhm.
Something about them that is so very interesting is the intonation, right? They're tonal languages. And that makes it very interesting and very complex when you realize a lot of languages are not tonal. French is a little bit more tonal, perché j'ai pour dire quelque chose en français qui sonne mal que l'autre chose, mais in English you don't have the tonal, structure. But then when you actually put a tone to the language, it gives you a different meaning, even, right? And
Right.
that's actually something I found that is very remarkable.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, and I've read a little bit about that and heard a little bit about that, and you probably know more about that than me. But what you're saying is absolutely correct, and that is that you have the same word, you have an identical word, and you pronounce it. You emphasize a syllable slightly differently, and simply the
Exactly.
emphasis on the syllable, it gives it a different meaning. Now that's a totally different structure of language. I mean, literally, it's a totally different structure of language, and that's a very interesting point. Thank you, Salma. I hadn't thought about that for quite a while. So, how did people come up with this idea, changing the tone of the same word and having a different meaning? It blows your mind. It's unbelievable, and so far as I'm concerned. And again, the Romans 2, it says that, what does it say there? That you should be able to see God by the things that you see. I mean, we're speaking a language all the time. We listen to languages all the time, and we should be able to see God in that because humans cannot come up with this. It's just not possible. Okay, so I hopefully expanded on the word confound here. What I would say is that God, when it says, and which I just mentioned, that God confounded the language, it doesn't mean he mixed it up so that nothing was comprehensible. Sort of like if you mix a few ingredients together, you get something new, but you can't get the ingredients out once they're mixed. Here, when God confounded the languages, he made, let's say, about 4,000 languages, but each language is totally comprehensible by those people, obviously, who speak that particular language. So he made 4,000, let's say, out of one. One language into 4,000, boom, instantaneously that happened. Once again, the power and the miracle that took place here, that's what I would have to say about the word confounded. Okay, Salma, does that help you, or does that sort of answer somewhat your question?
Very well, Sam. Thank you for explaining. I've always wondered why God did that, but then I guess he didn't want to mix the different tribes, like their level of understanding would be different, so they have their own. I guess we actually come from mammals. Mammals are pack animals, so we belong to our own tribe, right? So it was actually that whole idea behind tribalism, and that's why each tribe had their own culture, their own language, and their own being. Language is cultural. And then
Right.
I kind of realized that's actually how God intended it, the beginning. But now you mentioned from the book of Ezekiel, or was it
I'd have to
Zechariah?
check that. I think it's in Zechariah, actually, but I would
God
have to
didn't
check it.
want us humans to be like them. I mean, Elohim and the angels, right?
Okay, well, let me just intervene.
Maybe that's what I think.
Okay, let me just intervene here because God had a reason. He had a specific reason for doing what he did, obviously, as God always has a reason for doing what he does. It's just that we have to figure it out. And he gives us the reason. And I've just highlighted the word here, imagined, on the screen. Before I do that, I just want to come back to a little point you mentioned that we come from mammals, which is not exactly that. If we want to look into the Bible and see what the Bible says, God made us from the dust of the earth. He didn't make us from mammals. Mammals are also made from ground, but we humans are made from the dust of the earth. And then, of course, he breathed into us the neshama and the ruach. I've explained represent the consciousness and mind. So that's another story, the creation of humans, which I'll leave off for now because I want to answer your other question. And the other question, of course, is what you have just alluded to, and which is the question that you originally gave us. Katrina, I see, raised her hand. Maybe you want to add something to this, or go ahead.
Yes, I wanted to ask you a question within what you was talking about, the languages and things. So recently I was using the 7 keys and someone said that I was using cryptology. Is that what is that what you were thinking when you were developing the 7 keys? Because I was surprised when they said that. It was like, oh, okay, so this is like cryptology. And I'm like, okay.
Well, so my first question would be, how would you define cryptology?
From when I looked it up, it's like finding the mystery within the language of what is being said within text, I guess. Like having like looking at the Bible and seeing that everything's not in order and there's some hidden meaning behind it. So you have to really break it down to understand the bigger picture, I guess.
I think that what you've just said is correct. So, but the nuance or the slight modification that I would say is that it's not the 7 keys that are the cryptology, it's the Bible that is written sort of, it's cryptic. In other words, it's difficult to understand. It's difficult to take apart and discover the meanings and what's in it. The 7 keys are actually what takes the mystery out of it and what begins to open the doors. That's, the keys. It opens the doors to understand the mystery of the Bible. And it's what Paul says. These mysteries will be open, will be given to you. He uses that specific word. So that's the way I look at the 7 keys. If I go back into a very short history and very quickly here, how did I get into this? Because I never did get into this originally. So how did I get into it? Well, I was going through actually our church, the church that I was a pastor of, it blew apart. Literally, there were doctrinal discussions and doctrinal dissension, incredible, and it broke into various groups and whatever. Of course, I was a pastor for 25 years in this church, and all of a sudden, everything that you've been teaching, it was in shambles. And you're kind of there. What's going on? What do I believe? What's happened to my beliefs and all of that? And so I decided that I was going to go back and start at the beginning and take a look at it. And I got into Genesis, and I knew a little bit of Hebrew because I'd studied Hebrew before, and I decided to go and look at the Hebrew and see what the Hebrew says. And so that's how I started this whole thing. And this now goes back another over 20 years when I started this, the end of the 1990s. And I just started in Genesis, and I thought all these different ideas came up. I thought I'd write a book about it. and that turned into 7 books. But the point is that 4 of those books, the first 3 I ended up are introductory books, and then the last 4 of that series of 7 books is actually a commentary, practically a word-for-word commentary of Genesis 1 through 3. So there are 4 books on 3 chapters, literally. And because when I started getting into it and I started looking at the Hebrew, it was absolutely, I was just blown away. I was just totally amazed at what it was saying. And so that's what happened. So I finished those 7 books. And then after that, I wrote some other books as well. But the point is that as I was doing this study and after I'd finished the books, I realized that there were keys that had been using a certain methodology to do what I did. And that is when I formalized these 7 keys. Actually, there are other ones that I didn't necessarily include. And later on, I actually reduced that to the 4 steps. And the 4 steps include the seven keys. But I just wanted to simplify it and get to the essentials with the 4 steps. But that's how it came about. And I think today, maybe I shouldn't be saying this, maybe somebody else should be saying this, but it's revolutionary because you do not have to waste, I won't say waste, but you don't have to spend years and years studying the language. So you save an awful lot of time. And of course, if you do study the language with somebody, it's going to cost you a lot of dollars, a lot of money. So you save a lot of money, and you save a lot of time, and you get immediately to what I consider is the God-intended meaning, the original meaning of Scripture. And so I've said this before, and I'll say it again. I don't understand why I understand this. I don't understand. I consider that it was given to me. I'm not a linguist. I don't know Hebrew. I used to speak Hebrew, modern Hebrew, but I've lost that, and so I don't know. So I just consider it a gift from God that I'm able to do this. The gift that I have also is that I'm able to teach it. I'm able to show people how to do this. Anyway, that's how I got into this. But these are the keys that open this understanding. That's my understanding. Okay, so
That's so interesting, Sam, because it touches all the points that we just discussed today. That God thinks Genesis 11 confounded the language. So the language is not so obvious for us anymore, the confounded language. So his original meaning is hidden in a way. It becomes cryptic.
Yeah.
And we are to go back to find the keys to decode in a way, find the original meaning and build the right understanding.
Yes, I'll go along with that 100%. Some people today they'll swear by the King James translation, and they'll say that is God-given. That is the way to understand the Bible. No, that's not the way, and that's not the original text. The original text is the biblical Hebrew. And of course, there's a whole story of canonization and how God maintained that text. And this is what one of the things that absolutely amazes me is that that text has come through thousands and thousands of years, and it's been maintained there. And when we look into it, it all makes sense. And when I say it all makes sense, that is, as far as I'm concerned, there are no contradictions. That it goes from A to B to C to D, and then if I go to the ultimate, that Genesis explains Revelation, and Revelation comes back to Genesis, and written over 1,500 years with different people and different cultures. So how is this possible? How is this possible with such an intricate plan? It's impossible. It's not possible. So this has to be inspired. There's no way around this, as far as I can tell. Okay, so we could go on and on about the Bible and about the seven keys and about the mysteries in the Bible. We're going to stop there. Vanessa, I see you have your hand up. Go ahead, please.
Yes, thank you. I want to first make sure you can hear me. I have on this
Yes,
headset.
I hear you.
Okay, so I have two quick questions and then I have a response. So you were just talking about the seven keys, and I did that lesson. I went through most of that, the seven keys, and then you said you kind of brought that down to the four steps. So where do I find the four steps?
Oh, okay. Well, let me put it this way. If you've done the seven keys, you don't need the four steps because the four steps are just
Okay,
a smaller version of the seven keys.
right. Okay. But if someone wanted to kind of give a smaller version, the four steps, like even to someone else,
Oh,
is
okay.
that something? Mhm.
Actually did the four steps and they're part, I believe, yeah, it's in Mind Body Problem Solved. One of the initial chapters is the four steps.
Okay.
I don't know
Solved.
if you have that book, but you could go on to my website, the explanation.com, and just put in four steps in the search
Okay.
bar on the top. There's a magnifying glass on the top right there, and it'll probably bring up that chapter.
Okay.
Okay, if
Okay. So
yeah, you'll find it. Four steps, biblical Hebrew, etc. Something it'll bring up that chapter for sure.
okay. My
Okay.
next question is, yes, my next question is, you spoke about your books and you said book 12, the Bible, Proverbs, therapy, and then you mentioned helping people with mental health. Is that the last chapter? Is the helping people with mental health? Is that the whole book or just that last chapter in the book? And when will the book be ready?
Okay. The whole book is about improving mental health, but let me step back to fully answer your question, and that is this. The problem today is that you've got all kinds of psychologists and coaches and teachers and even pastors or whatever who are telling you how to heal the mind or overcome mental illnesses, let's say, of which the mildest would be anxiety and then stress and depression. And the worst part of that is that it leads to suicide. So they're telling you, and the number of, in fact, the last chapter was about alternative therapies. And I looked up alternative therapies. There are over 1,000 alternative therapies to treat your mind, to deal with mental health. So it's confusion. It's total confusion out there and some of these alternative therapies are dangerous. You have to be very, very careful with certain of these things that are being proposed. But the point is this, is that how can you treat the mind if you don't even know what the mind is? If I bring something, some mechanical contraption into a mechanic, and he says, I don't know what that is. I don't know how to fix it, but leave it with me. I'll take care of it for you. Wait a minute. You don't know what this is. You don't know how this works. I'm not going to leave this with you. But that's what we're doing with the mind. We're putting our minds in the hands of people who don't even know what a mind is. How can we expect them to heal it or to help us regain some sort of mental stability? It's impossible. So the first part of this book, and that is the whole of the book, Mind, Body, Problem Solved, which was my last book, The first part of this book, which is called Transform Your Mind, Upgrade Your Life. The first part of the book explains what the mind is. Not only what the mind is, but what consciousness is, neshama and ruach. So first of all, we have to explain what they are. And of course, again, I don't know exactly how far you are in your study of this, Vanessa, but that is where neshama, where God blew the breath of life, and that breath of life is neshama in Genesis 2, verse 7, into the first man, into the first human. So that is where it all starts. And that is, then we can begin to understand what consciousness is, what mind is, and what is involved. So at least half of that book, and it goes very quickly. It's about 100 pages, maybe a little bit more compared to Mind Body Problem Solved, which was 500 pages devoted solely to what mind and body, what consciousness and mind are. So that was more of a theoretical book, but very important because it's mind body problem solved. It's, a 400-year-old dilemma where nobody knows what what consciousness and mind are. So before we can heal, we've got to figure out what we're healing. And then the Bible Proverbs therapy is a very practical therapy that uses Proverbs to help people understand what they need to do with their consciousness and with their mind. And when you understand what to do with your consciousness and what to do correctly with the mind, then that is the basis for mental health. So the last, I would say, third of the book deals with the therapy. And then I'm going to end it with 12 practical lessons of the therapy so that a person can use it in a practical way there are two parts here. There's the first part, nurture, and the second part, heal. It's nurture and heal. And I'm actually, this last chapter is about the difference between nurturing and healing, because nurturing is what we should be doing with our children, with our young children and our adolescents. If we nurtured them properly, we would have less mental health issues. And unfortunately, we are not nurturing. And the further we go on now in our society, the further away from the proper nurturing we're getting. And that's why we are having more and more anxiety, more and more mental health problems. We are not coping with them. And all of these alternative methods are not the answers to the problem, because they don't know what the problem, well, they know what the problem is, but they don't know what's going on to cause the problem. So anyway, that's what this book is about. You can order a copy of this book. It's on pre-order. And all you have to do is go to theexplanation.com, and then it's /transform, simply the word /transform. The slash is the forward slash, and then the word transform. And that URL will take you to Amazon, where you can see the book and pre-order the book. The book should be out, I would say, the date of release is February of next year. I'm hoping to release it before that, but you have to put in a date. So I put in February just in case. As I said, there are 12 chapters and 12 lessons left. At the most, that's going to be 12 weeks. So that's about 3 months. And then, of course, there's got to be a month to get the book ready, finalized. There's got to be indexes and a whole lot of other, proofreading and whatever. So that said, it's going to be I'm going to try for the end of this year, but that'll be maybe pushing it a bit. But you can see approximately the timeline. Okay.
Okay, well, I'm very happy to hear about this, because that's one thing that's really been on my radar, because I am seeing people that a lot, a lot of people that's coming up with mental health issues that seem like out of the blue.
Yeah.
And especially like, young people, maybe between their early 20s to late 30s, but even more than that. It's just a lot going on with mental health, and they're looking at it as psychosis and schizophrenia. And it's like, and people are not really getting help.
That's right.
So that's really on my radar. And I've been praying to see how I can help,
Are
be
you,
able to be a source
Vanessa,
for
are you
people.
involved in any psychology or anything like that?
No, I'm not involved. I've been doing studying, but I'm in health field, like on like a medical missionary type, but just the mental health, to be honest, and I don't mind saying this, I've seen it really, really affecting even my own family,
Mm.
where people are coming, just like coming up with mental health issues. And it's
Mm-hmm.
like, where is this coming from and how do we fix it?
Right. Okay, well, wouldn't mind chatting with you
Okay.
sometime. If you would, you've got my email, maybe just drop me an email
Okay.
or even a comment on the explanation.com or where
Okay.
where these meetings take place, and I'll contact you
Okay.
and we can chat about it further.
Okay.
Okay?
That's awesome. And the last thing I wanted to say was kind of to go back and answer. I think that what the question was on the table about the languages and why the languages was confounded.
Yeah.
Maybe that was the
Okay, well,
question.
actually, that's what I was just about to answer.
Okay.
Uh,
Okay.
Okay, thank you for now. Okay, so let me just, we're going to end this here. We're going to go a little bit over time, but we're going to end this with here and it's still up on the screen. I probably should have taken it down, but it's still here in Genesis chapter 11, Genesis 11, verse 6. And it says here, and the Lord said, behold, the people is one. Keep that in mind, is one, and they have all one language. So they were all together and they had this one language, and this they begin to do. What are they beginning to do? And now nothing will be restrained from them which they have imagined to do. So basically what we've got here, and I'm going to put this word up, imagine, 2161. Okay, because this is the reason why God confounded the languages, because he said that nothing will be restrained from them which they have imagined to do. So what we have here is the combined imagination of every human being, obviously, that existed at that time. And they are able, because of the one language, to combine all of that brain power. Call it brain power. I would call it mind power. And everything that we can think, everything that we can, as the Bible uses the word here, imagine, and combine all of that to do what they wanted to do. Now, of course, we're at the Tower of Babel, and there's a leader here, Nimrod, and we know that this is not what they are doing, what they're imagining is totally, and once again, I can't go into all the details here, but it's totally opposite of God's way. In the Bible course about the 7 keys, it talks about devarim, meaning God's commandments, and that they had their commandments. That is, Nimrod had his devarim as well. And that's up a little bit earlier on, where it says, actually, it says here, yeah, the whole world was one language. Yeah, here, it's one speech. because that verse 1 here, language and speech, we think, okay, we've got a language and we're speaking, but the word speech means a whole lot more. It's the word dabar here. And this is also the word, and you can see it here, for commandments. And the 10 commandments are eser devarim. It's the same word. And so basically what they had is they had their own commandments, in other words, their own way of life. And Nimrod was as it says, he was a great hunter. And what it's saying is that he was hunting humans. He was hunting human minds. He was trying to convert them to his way of thinking, to his commandments. And this is what's taking place here in the Tower of Babel. And that's why Babel means confusion as well. And it was a confusion from God's way in that sense. And so here, when it says everything, in the verse there where it says everything that is imagined, you can look and study these words, but it's over here in H2161, consider, devise. So they were planning, see, and look at this, plot, and look at this, think, but it's an evil type of thinking. So once again, it shows it's opposite to God's way. And notice this word here, purpose. That was their purpose. With their one language, they purposed to think evil, to devise plots against God's way. That is what they were doing. And we don't have the time, and I don't want to get into this, but of course, biblically, we know that part of the consciousness, one of the 5 aspects of consciousness, is purpose. Again, you have to read the book or read the chapters about this. So their entire consciousness and their mind was purposed. Literally, this is number 1 here, to do and think evil and to set up their own government, to set up their own system of laws, which was against God and against his way. And because there was the combined mental framework, the combined intelligence of all these people focused on this one thing, God decided it's not time yet. We don't want this. He has a plan, and that plan is for 7,000 years. And we were not at the 7,000 years. And so he had to stop it. He had to put a halt to going too quickly. The population wasn't yet, Christ hadn't come yet. The whole plan still had needed time. And so he came down and he confounded, he mixed up the languages. And what he basically did was he created separate groups so they couldn't combine all of this intelligence. That was the reason. Now,
Beautifully said.
Pardon?
Beautifully said, Sam, right
okay,
there.
so
we didn't want to combine
I'm going to, thank you, Salma. So what I want to do very quickly is we're going to go over to Revelation 17, because I want to show you what's going to happen in the future. And this is, once again, this is the beauty of the Bible. We're talking about, it's what we talked about a little earlier, about how Genesis and Revelation fit together, and how they combine, and what's going on, and God confounded the languages. And of course, today, we've still got the 4,000 languages, but we've got automatic translation devices. You've probably seen them. I get advertising on my computer all the time for these automatic translators, and you've seen how they work, where somebody can speak into the There's literally, it's a handheld device. They can speak in their languages, and then it automatically translated into the language, whatever the language that the person opposite. If you're in Japan, it'll be in Japanese. If you're in South Africa, it can be in Swahili. It'll change it into every language so that the person that you're conversing with can hear it in their language. They can answer in their language, and then it'll retranslate it back into your language. So today we've overcome this barrier. And of course, scientists now around the world can combine their intelligence and their imagination once again. So look at this in 17 verse 2 here, with whom the kings, once again, it's talking about the beast, it's talking about the end time and the government and how things are going to take place. And it says, with whom the kings of the earth, with whom is the beast, the kings of the earth have committed fornication. So basically what we have here is all of the kings of the earth. We have a unity once again. They maybe are speaking different languages. Well, it's not maybe, they are speaking different languages, but because they're able to work together and work through translators, whether it's in the UN, UNESCO, and all of these big organizations, they have all got translators, and they can translate from one language into any other language now. So the kings of the earth have committed fornication, and the inhabitants of the earth, of the earth, have been made drunk with the wine of her fornication. So we've got one government made up of all these kings, and they've infected, and it says here, the inhabitants of the earth. And so we've got this combined group once again, and that's what's happening today. We're all, again, I don't want to exaggerate here, but our culture, I'm just sort of thinking here off the top of my head, and that is people who travel around the world today, wherever they go, and they go into shopping centers. You've got the same stores. You've got the same big trade names, because it's one world. It's one world today. And I'm going to end here in 1711. And the beast that was and is, this is going to be the ultimate emperor, the ultimate leader in a bad sense. And he actually, Nimrod at the Tower of Babel, was a prefiguration of this beast. That's where it ties in. That's where you have the first part, the prefiguration, and then the accomplishment here. That's verse 13. So it's all of these kings and these inhabitants, they have one mind. See that? That's where it comes back to. And shall give their power and strength unto the beast. And this one mind here, if we go and look at it, is nome. See here, they agree, judgment, mind. Look at this, purpose. Exactly the same as Nimrod. They have one purpose. Here he uses the word resolve. They're resolved to do something. Look at this, counsel, consent, etc. And this, of course, comes from 1097, which is Gnosko, which is, it has a variety of meanings, but it basically means to know, to knowledge. Look at this, perception. Their consciousness is focused. And they, in spite of the 4,000 languages, they're all one. This is actually the answer to the question that you asked of the unity that's going to come at the end time. And there will be this unity. And of course, this is where they fight against Christ when he returns. Okay, well,
Hi,
we had,
Sam.
I think, quite an interesting session here.
Can you hear me, Sam?
Sure.
Yeah, I wanted to add something to your point here, because if you look at Genesis 11, verse 6, if you may go back to that quickly, there is a word that is very cryptic, actually.
Genesis 11
Yeah.
and verse 6.
Verse 6,
Here we are.
just the one before the confounding. if you look at this, they begin to do, just a little bit, yeah, in the middle. This they begin to do. If you open that,
begin.
Yes, the one begin is actually about profaning, to defile, to break, to do something, and in the original Hebrew it means that to do something immoral.
Oh yeah, there you go. Look, pollute, prostitute, slay, sorrow. Yeah, you're right.
So in a way that they are one mind to corrupt themselves, to defile themselves. Already back to that time, God confounded the language so that to slow down the process.
Correct.
To give us grace to know him, and it's gonna come back again. The destruction is evolving from the moment of Babylon.
Right.
Babel, Tower of Babel. God disrupt, confound the language so that this corruption of one mind, of an evil mind, evil imagination, just like before the flood, right? Before the flood,
right.
God also said that their imagination was so evil, there was nothing good in it.
That's absolutely right.
And now
Amen.
we are so many years later, all the way to the end of the time where there will be one government, one mind again, like what you said in Revelation 17, is to give themselves to the beast, which is the image of corrupt mind.
Exactly.
So that's what I want to share.
No, I really appreciate that, because it's impossible, I think, for one person to be able to study all these words and know the meaning of all these words. And I think that, if you just read this verse 6 here, and this they begin to do, you would have no way of knowing that the begin here is negative, that it means pollute, profane, prostitute, etc., etc. So thank you. You did the study. This is the meaning of the 7 keys. The 7 keys opened up this word for you, and I hadn't even seen this. So great.
And it's thanks to you. Yes.
Yeah, no, so this is where we can, combine our understanding for good. Our purpose is to understand God's intended meaning and to spread this. That's what the whole goal is here. Okay, well, thank you, G, and thank you, everybody, for joining us, and we'll see you on the 3rd Thursday of next month.